Hello, this is Dr. Harriet Fraad bringing you Capitalism Hits Home, a podcast sponsored by Democracy at Work. Today, I want to talk about the state of women in the United States, which is certainly a fraught topic because women in the United States are really opting out of oppression. We're under siege, but we're also making history. And we're facing two conflicting realities. On the one hand, we're under political and economics and social siege by the Republican government. And on the other, we're refusing to stay silent. We're stepping outside of marriage. We're stepping outside of childbearing. We're speaking up about sexual abuse. And those are all amazing. They're all very new. Women are also protesting against and stepping outside of the care work which has been invisible and unpaid in the United States. We're stepping outside of whole systems that disempower women, like the system of devaluing and not counting as work. Women's work connecting people, women's work bringing up children, women's work creating children and giving birth, women's work managing children's lives and men's social lives, women's work providing for men's sexual needs and their emotional needs. That's all work which goes under the radar. And Rebecca Solnit is a brilliant writer. And as she says, she takes rape as a kind of quintessential male domination token. And she says, most rapists rely not just on physical power, but on social and legal dominance. They count on a system that discredits victims and silences victims with shame and threats and non-disclosure agreements. Women have trouble. It's hard to trust the law, which is overwhelmingly run by and for men. They don't necessarily feel protected there. And rapists in the United States count on getting away with it because of a system that hands them power and steals it from victims. They count on a silencing system enforced by profound inequality. You can see that so graphically among Epstein's victims who didn't speak up because they were poor. They looked for women who were young women from families on welfare or families that were facing homelessness. And these women were brought into an opulent mansion where they were raped. They obviously didn't feel they had the power to expose the person who raped them, who lived in such a mansion with so much money. Because rape is a ritual of domination. It's a display of power over somebody who is systematically stripped of her and sometimes his power. It's entitlement in a system that celebrates male entitlement and female subjugation. You have Trump's boast. They let me do it. I'm famous. Well, that's changing. Even at this time, that is changing. There's progress. Thanks to a feminist movement that organized, that marched, that lobbied, that demonstrated, and all over the United States. That movement is recent in history. Younger people may forget, but it was in 1972, and not until 1972, that women had legal access to birth control. Men had condoms all the time, but women did not have birth control. It was illegal. We got abortion rights in 1973, even though now there's only 9 states out of 50 that have full access to abortion. But in 1973, we fought for abortion rights and we won. In 1974, is the first year we got credit in our own names. So it's the first year we could borrow money, start a business in our own names, buy a house and a mortgage in our own names. These were huge advances. Also, 1971 was the first rape crisis center, which women started and got the funds for. And then 1973, we opened the first battered women's shelter. Obviously, battery is still a problem. 1 in 3 relationships includes physical violence by the man. And half of the homicides of women between 15 and 44 are at the hands of their intimate partners. And an even greater percentage of pregnant women who are killed by their intimate partners, because pregnancy is something, obviously, women are superior in. Men can't do that. It's a power. So we fought for these rights. They weren't handed to us. There was a slogan that we used to have in the 70s called "No More Nice Girls." In other words, don't be so accommodating and subject yourself. And I remember on a march I went in early 1970, an abortion rights march, and I was with a group called No More Nice Girls. And it was an artists group, and they had made foam rubber sleeves for us with huge foam rubber pink fists and that extended all the way over to our elbows so that we could raise enormous fists with the slogan, "No More Nice Girls." And even though we had those fights, those rights that we won are now trying to be invisibilized, as some of Trump's followers don't even want us to have the vote. And now that abortion bans, as I said before, exist, so that only 9 states allow full abortion rights, which we won in 1973. We now have a president who's a convicted sex offender. He bragged about getting away with it because he was rich and famous. There are abusers on the highest level of our government. These are the downsides for women lately. Brett Kavanaugh is on the Supreme Court. 40 women wanted to testify against Brett Kavanaugh. Only 9 women out of 40 were allowed to testify. Trump nominated Matt Gaetz to be Attorney General, head of our laws. However, he was disqualified because of its being proven that he took a minor girl across state lines for paid sex. So he was trafficking an underage girl. Then, of course, there's Pete Hegseth, head of the Department of War, who was accused of sexual assault, and he got off for giving the woman an undisclosed sum. You could just imagine how much it was. While Pete Hegseth has been in office, he tried to get women out of combat roles in the Army. But since women are just under 18% of the Army, that one didn't work, since they don't have enough volunteers. But it did work that he eliminated the military's task force on improving military life for women and fired several top military leaders who are women. He did that for black people too, fired them. Then we have Robert F. Kennedy, our supposed health person, who was accused of all sorts of really grievous sexual assaults. He did apologize, but that's hardly enough justice for the people victimized. And then, of course, we have Elon Musk, who has 14 children and feels that his sperms are invaluable to populate the world. He was the head of the Department of Governmental Efficiency, DOGE, and there was a lawsuit against him from all the women in SpaceX, accusing Musk and SpaceX of cultivating a woman-hating, sexist atmosphere at work. One of the things that happened in 2024, which was an enormously important thing for women, was the case of Giselle Pellicot. It was a case of women transferring shame and speaking out. Giselle Pellicot made headlines all around the world. Even though the case was in France, it was very much followed in the United States. Her husband was accused and confessed of drugging her night after night and inviting men to rape her while he filmed the rapes. There were 51 men who were accused of raping her unconscious body. Every day of her trial, Giselle Pellicot was met with thousands of women and men supporting her. She wanted a public trial because she felt the shame is not mine. When we are abused, it is a shame on our abusers, and we cannot be left with the shame. We need to transfer the shame. That was one of the reasons why this little 50-year-old woman became such a heroine to women all over the world. Similarly, in terms of courage and speaking out, which is happening now, 200 victims of Epstein's rapes have spoken out. And they've spoken out against very powerful men like Trump and Bill Clinton and Leon Black, the head of Apollo. He stepped down with the scandal, the head of Apollo Global Management, the biggest finance capital management firm in the world. And of course, Alan Dershowitz from Harvard. Those are people who use their money to eliminate compassion, dignity, and respect for other people who are women. But women, and many men also, are no longer keeping silent about those crimes. There were numerous men in Giselle Pellicot's support crowds outside of the court. Women are naming names and transferring the shame that they used to carry silently in themselves onto the men who try to sexually abuse them. And there are so many. You can look it up in Google. There's pages and pages. Women are also opting out of two institutions that have oppressed us. One is marriage, and the other is childbearing. We're resisting not just legally or politically with demonstrations, but we're opting out. For the first time in American history, the majority of American women are single, and by choice. Around 70% of divorces are now initiated by women. That old saw of the woman dragging the man to the altar has been reversed. Birth rates also are victims of a birth strike in every nation in the world except for Sub-Saharan Africa. Women are refusing to have a lot of children. It's a lot of work, and it's unpaid, and women earn less than men, and when they're mothers, they earn even less. And they're also not given support in universal child care, not given financial support in most countries, and their work has been invisibilized. Mothers in the United States who work part-time only take home 62 cents on father's dollar, fathers who work. they get only 62 cents, 62% of the dollar that men get for working part-time. Full-time women who are mothers get only 72% of what their full-time fathers get. There's even a word for it in the vocabulary. It's called the motherhood penalty, that when you become a mother, you have a financial penalty, even though you may need more desperately to have the money to support yourself and your child, you have a financial penalty. And the parallel to that is the fatherhood bonus. Men tend to be paid more when they're fathers. Even in cultures that pressure women into marriage, so example, in Senegal, women aren't considered fully matured female people unless they're married, but women find ways to subvert marriage. In Senegal, an enormous number of women marry migrants who are about to leave. The migrants leave, and they stay there in Senegal. There's a worldwide birth strike. Women from US to China, even China that used to have a one-child policy against population growth, are now urging women to give birth. Now, of course, they're not offering free universal childcare, but they are urging women to have children. Because women all over the world are saying no to having the responsibility to earn money and also be unpaid servants and caregivers in the home. And across the world, women are standing up for our rights. There are huge women's strikes in Mexico, in Argentina, in Spain, in India, in Ireland. There are movements for acquiring rights that we need. For example, abortion rights. Within the last few years, Argentina, an overwhelmingly Catholic country, where the Pope himself went, when the Argentine Pope, to urge Argentinians to vote against the right to abortion, abortion passed. The same thing happened in Ireland, also a very Catholic country. Abortion laws were stripped. Abortions were allowed to be safe and legal, even in Ireland. And in both countries, what happened was that women got together with indigenous movements and labor unions and civil rights groups, and they won. Women are now demanding that we be heard, and where we want a society where rape and abuse are not laughing matters or bragging matters or protected, regardless of the wealth and power of the rapist. We want an economy that values our labor, our emotional labor, our physical labor, our reproductive labor, our labor that creates life. Because households and families are supposed to create really a communist culture where the slogan, "from each according to his abilities to each according to his needs," is respected. Probably that's why women tend to be more left, because they've learned about a culture of care and need to be addressed rather than profit to be accrued. It's also we are fighting for ourselves to be considered as full people rather than as adjuncts of men. My own mother used to sign Mrs. Lewis Fraad. She even dropped her first name. We're stopping to acquire the man's name and be subsumed under him that way. Women are organizing. They're organizing against the blame of us. The slut walks that happen across the country where women get dressed up very sexually with signs saying, sexy dress is not a crime. It's rape that's the crime. And that's because in a lot of rape trials, they say, well, she was dressed enticingly, as if that's a crime. Women are also opting out of marriage and of childbearing, where we're unpaid and expected to work very hard. So that the combination of women recognizing that we have a right to stand up and not being silent, and also opting out of these social realities where we're expected to be subservient, like marriage and childbearing, which are highly labor intensive, are very radical moves that are happening in a time of real oppression, so that at the same time, women are challenging and standing up and also increasingly facing climates of male resistance and right-wing oppression. So good for us. We do have to organize. That's how we got the rights we have, and that's how we'll continue to be able to be full people in this society. Thank you. Goodbye.